Welcome back to Great Lakes Junction, everyone. We're back to working on the 65 Ford again. We have a brake fluid leak. It's in the right rear wheel. We can see brake fluid running out from the back of the wheel. So a wheel cylinder has come apart in there or blew a seal in it or something like that. So we already have it jacked up and on axle stands over in that other corner that we can't see from here. We've got the wheel pulled off and we're just about to get into taking the brake drum off of it now.
Okay, so sometimes with these drum brakes, they'll build up a little lip of rust around the edge of the drum that would sit just inside of where the brake lining material is, so they don't just slip off. So there's a manual adjusting tool. It's basically just a bent screwdriver, really. And there's a hole on the back of these. You can get into where the star wheel is on them and manually back off the pressure on the brakes a little bit so that you can slide that off over the brake shoes. Okay. So there's a slot there on the back, the backing plate for the brakes. And there's usually a rubber plug in there to stop whether rain or water from splashing in. This one's missing. But there's a star wheel in there, and you're going to reach in with your tool. Try and find it. There. It takes a bit of pressure because you're going against the natural way the mechanism wants to work. Each of those clicks, hopefully we're backing off the pressure on the brake shoe. So we got that back brake drum off. And see if we get enough light. It's just completely soaked in brake fluid. Brake dust is combined to make a sticky substance in here. So we're going to have to clean this all up. Definitely going to have to put a new set of brake linings on this. So we're going to carry on and take the wheel cylinder out. That's where it's leaking. And see whether it's completely shot or if we just get a seal kit and rebuild it. So here's our wheel cylinder. This is our guilty culprit that's leaking. I can see fluid running out of that end of it. You might not be able to get it on here though. Yeah. So that's our guilty culprit. Now there is a special brake tool you can buy, and it has one end that's made to help get these springs all undone, and another end is made specifically for these caps to help push them in and take them off. You can buy the brake tool if you want. I've done these enough times that I've never bothered to buy the brake tool. One of these pairs of pliers, you got a sliding adjustment there for 2 positions. I find that one of those works just as well. We're just going to push this cap in and do a quarter turn. Yeah, just like that. So those springs just help lock those into place. This is our cable that comes off the automatic adjuster assembly. It's in behind the springs up here at the top. Okay, now I'm going to have to get the camera to somebody else to hold on to because I definitely need 2 hands for this. Right back. This arm that's left on here, this is for the emergency brake. That's the emergency brake cable that's in the end of it there. So we're gonna, there's a clip on here. We're just gonna pry this clip open a little bit. There's a space now on this back side around that pin. Just get a small screwdriver in there. And we should be able to pry that pin off, or that lock clip rather. Almost got it. Okay, looking at things from the back side. So our brake line goes into the back of that wheel cylinder. There's the bleeder nipple that's on that. There's a bolt. There's a bolt there. And another one over here on the other side of this bleeder nipple. So we're going to take the brake line off. We'll take these two bolts out, and that should let us take that wheel cylinder out of the way. So the brake line's undone, bleeder nipple's out. We took the two bolts out on the back. Now this wheel cylinder will just pop out of here. Just like that. Now we'll take this over to the bench, and we'll take this apart further and see what happened to the seals inside of it. So that's all there is to those things. Can you look through it? That's all there is to them. Sometimes these might get scarred up or something and you have to hone them out to make a nice smooth surface. But it consists of two of these rubber seal cups in there, and a piston, and a spring that sits in between them. And that's all they have. Okay, so we're going to get into cleaning up some parts. We're not going to clean, well actually we are. So let's start with this big bad boy first. I'm just going to use my drain pan. We got some brake clean material. An old toothbrush. I'll give it a bit of a scrub and get the worst of it off. Some of the smaller parts here from the wheel cylinder, we're going to clean all those up. So we bought a new set of brake linings for this because the other ones are soaked in brake fluid also. And we inquired, they no longer make a seal kit for these wheel cylinders. And the wheel cylinder itself, this one's a little bit of an odd size according to them. They said it was something they rarely ever sold. And they not only did they not have any in stock, but all of the warehouses they use that they get their parts from, nobody had any of these things in stock. So they didn't seem to think that they could find any wheel cylinders. Now I did not check online at a place like Rock Auto or Max or something. I did not check them. They might have them. But I got looking around at this wheel cylinder, and what I think the issue is really, there's a couple of things here. There's a cable in the brake assembly, and it is the cable for adjusting the brakes up. When you're reversing, I'll show you later how exactly it works. It's for adjusting the brakes, and that cable, I don't know how, maybe the last time I had brakes apart for some reason on this car, I didn't realize the cable was actually disconnected. So this wheel has never been adjusting automatically the way it should. So as the brake linings wear down, they're expanding out further and further to do their braking. This wheel cylinder that pushes those shoes out had to be going out further and further as the brake material wore down. So I think it just got to the point where this opened up so far that it started getting right out to the outer limits towards the end of the cylinder, and the outer maybe quarter of an inch, an area where normally that cylinder never gets to in there, it's a little bit rusty, so it's not a nice smooth surface. And I think when those rubber cup seals got out into that area, that let the fluid pass because there was no longer a nice tight seal there. The rubbers themselves, there's no cracks in them. They don't look like they've been damaged at all from hitting that little bit of a rougher area. So I'm going to clean this all up. I don't have a proper honing tool to hone this out, but I'm going to use a Dremel tool with just very fine sandpaper wheel on it and just clean that rust out of the end a little bit. So we'll clean it all up, reassemble it. The original brake shoes, I said, are no good. They got brake fluid all over them. I'm going to clean them up just enough to put them back on, reassemble all this, put it back together, and just try the brakes to see if my job of cleaning this up will give it another seal that it won't leak anymore. And I'm going to do that with the old brake fluids in case it doesn't and brake fluid leaks out. I don't want it all over the new shoes that I have to put on. So that's the plan for today. So I'm going to continue working away at cleaning this stuff up. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, it's not going to show up real well, but on the inside around there, that's where the rust is that I'm trying to clean up. So the other end, you can see how shiny that is now. And we're just using a very light sandpaper on that Dremel. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it or anything, so I don't want to damage or score that metal that's in there. So we'll clean the other end up. I'm just going to put just a drop of oil in there because this cylinder should never get oil on it, brake fluid on it, because it shouldn't come past that rubber seal. So because I've cleaned up both surfaces, just the moisture in the air could cause them to start to rust up. So I'm just going to put a thin layer of oil in there. So now we've got that cylinder so it freely moves back and forth on both sides. So there's no more lip of rust in there that's stopping things. Hopefully the rubber seal cups in there, hopefully they're not damaged and not leaking. So we can reassemble that. We'll put our dust boots back on. They're really slippery now.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that because I was a little concerned, but
that's okay. So our dust boots are back on. We'll reinstall this in the car. First we have to clean up the mess of the brake fluid that's on the backing plate and the springs and everything in the car yet. So we'll get those parts all cleaned up and we'll reassemble. We'll clean the old brake pads off and put those back on just to try and see if that's going to leak or not. We have all of our pieces cleaned up now. We have the backing plate that's in the car cleaned up. I'm going to show you something on it actually. So when I'm talking about the backing plate, I'm talking about this plate here. And you'll see there's 3 shiny spots on this side. And you can't really see, well, there's one there, and one down there. So there's a total of 6 of those all the way around. And when your brake shoes are in here, the edge of the brake shoe rides on those spots. So I've cleaned the rust off of those spots. I'll put just a very light film of grease on them so the brake pads can slide back and forth. These ones are in really good shape. There's a small groove starting to wear into that tab. I've seen some of these with the groove is wore so deep the brakes don't actually work right. The shoe will slide, it'll fall into a worn groove that it has on there and doesn't actually get to the brake drum because it gets hung up and gets stuck in the groove. So I always put just a light layer of grease on them just to keep them a little slipperier. Everything else is cleaned up pretty much the best we can get it anyhow in here. So it's time to start reassembling